Tom looked at me seriously and said, "If you don't want to live with my parents, then we're getting a divorce." I wanted to respond, but he started yelling at me like we were having a big argument. I'm the only child, so it's my responsibility to take care of my parents. You knew that when we got married, and now you're saying you don't want to live with them? That's not going to happen. I was so shocked I didn't know what to say back. It's not that I didn't want to live with my in-laws, but I was really stressed out because my husband and his parents made unreasonable demands on me. Tom had been spoiled growing up. He got whatever he wanted, and his parents always praised everything he did. When he was in college, his parents even bought him an expensive bed just because he said his old bed was too hard. Even after we got married, his parents continued to make unreasonable demands. For example, when I bought a big bag of chicken thighs to cook for dinner, my mother-in-law, Clara, criticized me. "Stella, Tom has been complaining that your cooking isn't good because you keep making chicken thighs. They're cheap, but you should cook better meals sometimes." So, I tried making pork steak, but then my father-in-law, Richard, complained, too. "Isn't pork steak something poor people eat? Since Tom is working hard, you should make him a beef steak. He deserves better than this." Every time my in-laws said things like this, I felt so stressed out. But I knew that since Tom was an only child, this would eventually come up, and I had to be ready for it. I also grew up as an only child, but my dad, Bob, raised me on his own. We were comfortable financially, and my dad did all the housework. He was proud of me and always told me not to worry about him. He'd say, "I know you already have a lot to deal with, especially with your in-laws. Don't worry about me, Stella." Those words from my dad helped me handle the stress from my in-laws. But then, my dad passed away. At the funeral, Sam, my dad's friend, told me that my dad had been sick with cancer for years, but didn't tell me because he didn't want to worry me. I didn't notice anything was wrong with him, so I was shocked and heartbroken when I found out. At the funeral, Clara and Richard didn't show any sympathy for my loss. Instead, they told me I needed to take care of them since I was Tom's wife. They said, "You have to take care of your old parents. We're getting old, too." It was so rude and hurtful that I wanted to argue with them, but then I thought of my dad's smile and his kind words, which helped me hold back. Later, I found out that my dad had left me a large piece of land in New York. Sam showed me the will and said, "This land is in a great location. Don't waste it." When I got home, I was reading the will when Tom grabbed it from me. He was excited and said, "What do you think about building a two-family house on the land and living there with my parents? Doesn't that sound like a good idea?" I was shocked. "Why is Tom making decisions about land that's mine?" He said, "We should act quickly. I've been thinking about living with my parents, and now this land came up. It's perfect. I think it's a sign from God that we should build a two-family house." I was frustrated. "I don't think that's a sign from God." I took a deep breath and told him, since this land came from my father, I should decide how to use it. "Let me think it over." Tom got angry and yelled, "Wives' things belong to their husbands too. You've been living off my money, and now you're saying this land is only yours? That's not fair." I tried to stay calm. "I'm not saying it's only mine, but I inherited it, so I get to decide what to do with it. If you have a better idea, I'm open to hearing it." Tom crossed his arms and stared at me, waiting for me to say something. "I can't think of anything right now. This is all happening too fast." He said, "I knew you wouldn't have a better idea. Wait. Let me look into it and figure out the best way to use the land," I insisted. "We don't have time to think about it," Tom said, turning his back on me. At that moment, I knew we weren't going to agree, and I couldn't say anything more. After the conversation about the land, I tried to talk to Tom several times, but he refused to listen. He would only say, "We're building a two-family house," over and over. Sam, the friend of my father who had spoken to me at the funeral, called me a few times to check on me. After my dad passed away, Sam was the only person who gave me comfort. Talking to him helped me stay calm and strong, and he listened to everything going on between Tom and me. 6 months later, I got a call from someone who claimed to be from a big home building company. "The house you ordered is almost finished. Can we set a date for your final payment?" the person asked. I was confused and asked, What house are you talking about? The caller seemed surprised and said, the house was ordered 6 months ago. I immediately went to Tom and asked, did you order a house behind my back without telling me? Tom answered without apologizing, saying, you were taking too long to make a decision, so I went ahead and made it for you. I was upset. You did it without even talking to me. That's wrong. Tom shrugged it off. If I hadn't made the decision, nothing would have happened. You wouldn't have agreed to anything, and we'd still be stuck. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What do you mean I wouldn't agree? Is it wrong for me to have a say in what happens to my land? Tom just kept repeating, it's not your land. I told you before, wives' things belong to their husbands too. I was frustrated. But you should have talked to me about it first. Tom sighed loudly and muttered, what a pain, then said, you really don't want to live with my parents, huh? I responded, that's not the issue. I have the right to decide how the land is used. But Tom didn't seem to care. Fine. If you don't want to live with my parents, let's just get a divorce. I was shocked. Was my husband really threatening me with divorce just because I didn't agree to his idea of building a house for his parents and us? Tom told me, I'm the only child, and it's my duty to live with and take care of my parents. You knew this, so you have no right to say no, and because of this, I'm leaving you. I signed the divorce papers without hesitation. I was treated unfairly, and my love for Tom was gone. All I felt was frustration and stress from his parents. They kicked me out, but honestly, I didn't mind. My only regret was losing the land my father had left me. I called Sam and told him what had happened to the land. That must have been tough, Sam said. His voice was kind and full of sympathy, but then he said with more confidence, don't worry, we'll get that land back. I was confused. What do you mean? Sam didn't answer my question, but just smiled. After the divorce, I moved into an apartment. I was looking for a job, but I wasn't in a rush because I had a plan for my future. My only real concern was the land I inherited from my dad. I didn't understand what Sam meant, but I decided to trust him because he was a good friend of my father's. Then I got a call from Tom. You signed a contract to build a mansion on that land? Why didn't you tell me? You tricked me, didn't you? He shouted. Wait, what? I asked, confused. I just got sued by the construction company for building the house on that land, Tom said angrily. Since I was talking to Sam when Tom called, I gave Sam the phone. Sam smiled and started talking to Tom. Hey, Tom, you're being too loud. Don't you know how to talk to a lady? What you're saying sounds like moral harassment. Huh? Who are you? Tom asked. I'm an old friend of Stella's father, Sam replied. I know all about the land. Stella's father made the contract to build the mansion before he passed away. He knew that you and your parents would try to take the land without Stella's permission, so he made sure the house was built before you could do anything. Tom was silent for a moment. Why didn't I know about this? Because you took the will away from Stella before she finished reading it, Sam explained. You only read part of the will, didn't you? I remembered that Tom had taken the will from me before I could finish reading it. He never let me see it again. Sam continued. Stella told me everything. When I heard the truth, I thought you would cancel the contract on your own, but I kept quiet. I knew it. You tricked me, Tom shouted. No, you did this to yourself, Sam said. I could practically hear Tom gritting his teeth on the other end of the phone, and I felt good about it. Sam handed the phone back to me. Stella, you have something to tell him. I took the phone and said, yes, Tom, I have something to say, and it's something you'll regret. This is why I took my time. I needed time to figure out how to make sure you and your parents regret treating me this way. Tom, you'll be getting a claim for damages and alimony soon, I said calmly. What? Tom sounded confused and upset. Since you used my land without my permission, I did my research. I found out that I can claim damages if a house is built on my land without my approval. Tom sounded angry. You've got to be kidding. I stayed calm. It wasn't without permission, because what belongs to the wife belongs to the husband. Tom yelled, but I'm not your husband anymore, am I? I smiled to myself. That's right. We're divorced now. The land is still mine, and because we're divorced, you and your parents have no right to it anymore. Tom was silent. I continued. Oh, and by the way, all our conversations about the house and land were recorded. I have proof that you tried to force me to agree to build a two-family house on my land. Every time I disagreed, you harassed me, and I have all of that recorded. I gave the recording to my lawyer. This is for the alimony, I added. I heard Tom swear on the other end of the phone, then, he hung up without saying anything else. I couldn't believe it when Tom called again. This time, his tone was completely different. He sounded upset, almost like he was about to cry. Stella, I'm sorry, I really am. You're the only one for me, please, let's get remarried. I couldn't believe his words after everything he had put me through. I don't trust you anymore, I replied. You and your parents have treated me terribly. I'm really sorry. I'll apologize as many times as it takes, Tom begged. I knew exactly why Tom was so desperate. After I spoke with my lawyer, it became clear that Tom and his parents had to tear down the house they built on my land and return it to me. The eviction from the house they had built and the lawsuit from the construction company meant they had no place to live anymore. That's why Tom was trying to win me back, hoping I would drop the lawsuit and save them. He even suggested I could buy the house they had built, but I refused. After everything they'd done to me, I wasn't going to show them any mercy. I decided to have the house demolished. Then, Clara called. We're old, and we don't have much time left. I can't imagine being homeless. I'm sorry if I've caused you trouble. Can we have another chance? But I refused to listen. Clara lashed out, calling me a devil. To me, it was just the desperate cry of a loser. I calmly said, whatever. The house was demolished, and the land was returned to me. The mansion was built, and now I have a steady income from tenants. On top of that, I'm receiving compensation from Tom and his parents every month. As for Tom and his family, they ended up moving into a cheap apartment. They are struggling to pay off their debts, the damage compensation and alimony to me, the loan for the demolished house, and the damage to the construction company. Tom is working a second job, Clara has a part-time job, and Richard is cleaning restrooms in a shopping mall. I'm watching over them to ensure they make the payments on time. I won't help them, though. They made their own bed.